Imagine stepping back in time, not just to see the ruins of Rome, but to live it, to breathe it, to taste it. Today, we're not just visiting the past, we're becoming guests at an ancient Roman banquet, a cena. Close your eyes for a moment. Forget the world outside. The year is 70 AD, and you've just received a very special invitation. We walk through the bustling streets of Rome, the sounds of merchants and chariots fading as we approach a magnificent villa. The entrance, the Otium, is guarded not by a person, but by a stunning mosaic of a dog on a leash with the words Cave Canum. Beware of the dog. It's a classic Roman welcome, a mix of art and a little bit of playful intimidation. An enslaved person, the Ostiarius, greets us with a warm smile, takes our dusty sandals, and offers us new, softer ones for inside. We're led through a beautiful courtyard, the atrium, where a fountain gently splashes. Its cool mist, a welcome relief from the Roman heat. The walls are alive with vibrant frescoes, depicting scenes from mythology and daily life. A feast for the eyes before the real feast begins. We're not just any guests, we're honored attendees. The host, a wealthy senator, greets us personally in the peristyle, a lush, colonnaded garden. The air is thick with the scent of blooming roses and jasmine, mixed with the fragrant oils worn by the other guests. Everyone is draped in fine linen, their toga candida, a brilliant white under the late afternoon sun. The low murmur of Latin conversation, punctuated by laughter, fills the air. We are here to experience the convivium, the art of living well together. Finally, we enter the Triclinium, the dining room. And this is where things get really different. Forget tables and chairs. Here, 3 large couches are arranged in a U-shape around a central table. Each couch, or lectus, is designed for 3 diners who will recline on their left elbows, leaving their right hands free for eating. It might seem strange to us, but for the Romans, this was the posture of relaxation and luxury, a sign that you were free, not a laborer who had to sit upright to eat quickly. We find our assigned places sinking into the plush cushions. The low central table is already adorned with exquisite silver and glassware, shimmering in the lamplight. Now the banquet begins. A proper Roman cena is a 3-part affair: the gustatio, or appetizer, the prime mense, the main course, and the secundae mense, the dessert. We're starting with the gustatio, designed to whet the appetite. Enslaved servers, silent and graceful, move between the couches. They bring small, intricate dishes. First, a platter of dormice. Yes, you heard that right. Not the cartoon kind, but a delicacy, fattened on nuts and honey, then baked and glazed. They are surprisingly tasty, a little savory, a little sweet. Next to the dormice are sea urchins, served fresh, with a sprinkle of salt and a drizzle of olive oil. Their briny taste, a perfect taste of the Mediterranean. Then come the eggs, but not just any eggs. They are served with a rich, fermented fish sauce called garum. Garum is the ketchup of ancient Rome, used in almost everything. It's salty, savory, and adds a depth of flavor that's hard to describe. It's an acquired taste, for sure, but an essential part of the Roman palate. Alongside these, we have olives, both green and black, cured in brine, and a selection of fresh vegetables, like radishes and lettuces, lightly dressed with vinegar and oil. To wash it all down, we're served mulsum, a popular Roman aperitif. It's a sweet wine mixed with honey. The sweetness cuts through the saltiness of the garum and the olives, cleansing the palate and preparing us for what's to come. As we enjoy these first bites, the conversation flows. We discuss politics, poetry, the latest gossip from the forum. Music plays softly in the background. A lyre and a flute, creating a soothing, almost hypnotic melody. A poet might stand to recite a few verses, or a philosopher might pose a question for the guests to ponder. This isn't just about eating. It's a full sensory and intellectual experience. The atmosphere is one of refined indulgence. The Romans understood that a meal was more than just sustenance. It was performance. It was social bonding. It was a display of wealth and culture. Every detail, from the mosaics at the door to the arrangement of food on the platter, was carefully considered. The host watches his guests, a proud smile on his face, ensuring everyone is comfortable. Their cups are full, and their spirits are high. The gustatio has been a journey of new flavors and sensations, a tantalizing preview of the opulence yet to unfold. And believe me, this is just the beginning. The main courses, the primae mensae, are where the true spectacle of Roman culinary ambition will be revealed. Stay with us, because the feast has only just begun. The sun has now dipped below the horizon of the Mediterranean, leaving a bruised purple sky that mirrors the silk of your cushions. In the villa of the Caesar, the transition from twilight to night is not a sudden darkness, but a blooming of light. The slaves move through the triclinium with the grace of ghosts. They carry small bronze oil lamps, each one shaped like a sleeping dolphin or a theatrical mask. The wick is made of twisted flax, and the oil is the purest press of the olive, clear and scentless. As they touch fire to the wicks, the room begins to breathe. The shadows on the frescoed walls paintings of garden trellises and blue-winged birds begin to dance. The light does not glare. It glows, a soft, amber pulse that softens the edges of the marble pillars and the faces of your companions. You feel the coolness of the evening air drifting in from the peristyle garden. It carries the damp scent of moss and the sharp, clean aroma of the boxwood hedges. This is the breath of the house. The Romans believed that a room must breathe just as a person does. And as you recline, you find your own breath sinking with the slow, steady flicker of the lamps. There is no urgency here. The world outside, with its politics and its noise, has been barred at the heavy oak doors. Before the main course, the prima mensa, begins, there is a moment of sacred stillness. The Caesar rises slightly from his elbow. A silver bowl is brought forward, filled with wine that has been aged in amphorae deep in the cool earth of the cellar. He pours a small ruby stream onto the floor. Clink. The sound of the silver ladle against the bowl is the only sharp noise in the room. This is the libation to the lares, the household gods who guard the hearth and the threshold. You watch the wine pool on the mosaic floor, a dark stain against the white tesserae. It is a reminder that even in the height of luxury, there is a connection to the invisible world, to the spirits of the ancestors who watched over this land long before the first stone of Rome was laid. The silence that follows is thick and comfortable, like a heavy wool blanket. Your hand brushes against the table beside your couch. It is carved from a single slab of citrus wood from the Atlas Mountains, its grain swirled like the surface of a stormy sea. It feels cool and impossibly smooth under your fingertips. Now, the second movement of the meal begins. The gustatio plates are cleared away with a practiced, silent efficiency. You hear the faint chime of glass, the famous Roman Morin glass, speckled with gold and violetas. The drinking cups are refilled with water, cooled by snow, brought down from the Apennine peaks. The snow is wrapped in straw and kept in deep pits, a miracle of the mountains delivered to the heat of the coast. As you drink, the chill of the water contrasts with the warmth of the room, a sensation that centers you, grounding your mind in the present moment. From the shadows of the corner, a musician begins to play. The instrument is a kithara, its frame carved from polished boxwood and ivory. The strings are not struck, but stroked. Each note is a drop of water falling into a deep well. The melody is ancient, a Phrygian mode that winds through the air like incense. It has no lyrics, 4 words require the mind to work, to interpret, to understand. Tonight, the music is only for the body. It vibrates through the wood of your couch, a low, resonant hum that you feel in your very bones. The Caesar closes his eyes, his head tilted back against the cushions. He is no longer the master of the world. He is a listener, a traveler in the landscape of sound. You find your own eyelids growing heavy, the rhythm of the music slowing your pulse until it matches the steady, rhythmic lap of the waves against the villa's foundation. Everything is slow. Everything is intentional. The night is young, and the feast has only just begun to reveal its heart. The air in the triclinium has grown warmer now, seasoned by the steady glow of the bronze lamps and the collective breath of the gathered guests. We have moved past the initial quiet of the evening and into the heart of the feast, the prima mensa in the Roman world. This is the first table, the core of the banquet, where the most elaborate and storied dishes are revealed. But as you recline on your purple cushions, you feel no rush. There is no pressure to finish, no ticking clock on the wall. Time has become fluid, flowing like the dark, honeyed wine in your glass. The arrival of the great platters. Listen to the sound of the kitchen doors swinging opener, heavy wooden creak that echoes softly against the vaulted ceiling. The servants emerge in a slow, rhythmic procession. They do not walk, they glide, their leather sandals whispering against the mosaic floors. They carry large, oval platters made of hammered silver, so heavy they require 2 men to hold them steady. As the first platter is lowered onto the citrus wood table, a cloud of steam rises. It is a slow, swirling mist that catches the amber light of the oil lamps. You watch the steam coil and dissipate, carrying with it the first heavy scents of the main course. There is the deep, earthy aroma of roasted boar, marinated for days in a reduction of red wine and wild berries. There are the delicate floral notes of dormice glazed with honey and poppy seeds, a delicacy that represents the height of Roman decadence. You observe the architecture of the food. The Romans did not merely cook, they sculpted. The boar is presented as if it were still roaming the forests of Etruria, surrounded by trees made of sprigs of silver-green rosemary and boulders of roasted root vegetables. It is a landscape on a plate, a miniature world designed to be admired long before the first morsel is taken. Your eyes trace the glistening surface of the meat, the way the fats have rendered into a translucent gold, shimmering under the flickering flames. The geography of spice now. Let us focus on the sentha, invisible tapestry of the prima mensa. As you lean closer, your senses are greeted by a fragrance that traveled thousands of miles to reach this room. This is the scent of the empire's reach. Imagine a single peppercorn. It began its journey on the humid, monsoon-drenched slopes of the Malabar coast in distant India. It was plucked by hand, dried in the blistering sun, until its skin wrinkled and turned the color of a dark storm cloud, and then carried by spice caravans across the burning sands of Arabia. It crossed the Red Sea in a dhow with sails of woven palm, and finally it was ground into a fine, pungent dust in the kitchens of the Caesar. When you taste the sauce, the famous garum mixed with long pepper and lovage are tasting the geography of the world. The heat of the pepper is slow and creeping. It does not burn, but rather glows at the back of your throat, a tiny spark of the Indian sun. Beside it, there is the scent of cumin from the Nile Delta, earthy and warm, like the smell of sun-baked bricks after a rain. There is saffron from the fields of Cilicia, lending a metallic, hay-like sweetness and a color so vibrant it looks like liquid sunlight poured over the meat. As you breathe in these aromas, you feel a sense of profound stillness. These spices were once more valuable than gold, the cause of wars and the dreams of explorers. And here they are, drifting lazily through the air of a quiet room in Italy, their only purpose now to lull you into a state of sensory bliss. The philosophy of the slow meal. The Caesar reaches out with a silver skewer. His movements are deliberate, almost meditative. He does not eat for hunger. He eats for the experience of the moment. He takes a small piece of the roast, dipped in a thick, dark sauce of plums and Syrian dates. The earth provides, he murmurs, his voice a low rumble that seems to come from the very stones of the villa. But it is the mind that appreciates. To eat quickly is to live poorly. To savor is to honor the life that was given for the feast. You find yourself nodding in agreement, your head heavy against the goose-down pillow. You think about the cycle of life that brought this meal to the table. The boar that ran through the oak forests, the grapes that grew heavy and dark under the Mediterranean sun, the slaves who tended the vines, and the sailors who braved the great sea. All of these threads of existence have converged here, in this room, at this hour, for your comfort. The servants return, moving in their silent, underwater pace. They pour water over your hands, from a silver ewer water that has been scented with rose petals and citrus rinds. The liquid is lukewarm, a gentle caress against your skin. They dry your fingers with towels of the finest Egyptian linen, so soft they feel like a breeze passing over your hands. The deepening night. The music of the kithara has changed. The tempo has slowed even further. The musician is now plucking single, resonant notes that hang in the air for a long time before fading into the sound of the sea outside. Between the courses of the prima mensa, there are long periods of silence. This is not the awkward silence of a modern dinner party, but a fertile silence. It is a space for the mind to wander, to drift into the shadows of the room and back again. You watch the way the light reflects off a silver chalice, creating a dancing coin of light on the ceiling. You follow the movement of that light, watching it pulse with the flickering of the lamp. The weight of the meal is beginning to settle, a pleasant, grounding heaviness. Your limbs feel long and relaxed. The tension you carried in your shoulders when you first arrived at the villa has completely dissolved, melted away by the warmth of the wine and the steady, rhythmic pace of the service. In the Roman mind, this state was called Otium, holy leisure. It is the opposite of negotium, the non-leisure of work and worry. Here, in the Triclinium of the Caesar, Otium is the only law. You are allowed to simply exist. You are allowed to be still. The mystery of the god. As the servants bring out a secondary platter of grilled Mediterranean sea bass, draped in a translucent glaze, the Caesar begins to speak of the garum. This is the legendary fish sauce of Rome, fermented in large stone vats under the sun of Spain. It is the essence of the sea, he says, his eyes half closed. It is the salt, the sun, and the time. It takes months for the fish to break down, to give up its spirit to the brine. It is a lesson in patience. You cannot rush the garum, just as you cannot rush the dawn. You imagine the vats sitting on the coastal cliffs of Carthago Nova, the sound of the waves providing the rhythm for the fermentation, the salt air, the intense heat, the slow transformation of matter into flavor. This sense of long time, the time of seasons and fermentations into your consciousness. The world is not a place of minutes and seconds. It is a place of slow, inevitable processes. The fish is light, flaky, and tastes of the deep blue water. It melts on your tongue, leaving behind a faint tang of the ocean. You take a sip of the wine, now a heavier, darker vintage, from the slopes of Mount Vesuvius sand. Feel the complexity of the flavors dancing together. The sweetness of the dates, the heat of the pepper, the salt of the sea, and the smoke of the wine. The room is becoming a cocoon. The walls, painted with scenes of eternal gardens, seem to move closer, wrapping you in a world where winter never comes and the feast never truly ends. The outside world, the Rome of marble and noises, 1,000,000 miles away. There is only this couch, this light, and the slow, steady heartbeat of the night. The heavy, savory aromas of the roasted meats and the pungent spices of the Orient have begun to fade, lingering only as a ghost of a memory in the warm air. The servants have completed their silent circuit, removing the great silver platters of the prima mensa. The tables of citrus wood have been wiped clean with sponges soaked in rosewater and scented oils, leaving the surface gleaming like the surface of a dark, still lake. Now, a new atmosphere settles over the triclinium. If the main course was the sun, at its zenith bright, powerful, and intense, then the secunda mensa is the rising of the moon. It is the second table, a time of sweetness, of lightness, and of the slow, lingering transition toward the world of dreams. The arrival of the fruits of the earth. Listen to the soft, rhythmic sound of footsteps returning from the kitchen. This time, the pace is even slower, more ceremonial. The servants carry baskets woven from sun-bleached reeds and trays of delicate terra sigillata fine, red-glossed pottery that glows like embers in the lamplight. Upon these trays lie the treasures of the Roman orchards. There are figs so ripe they have begun to split, revealing a heart of deep, jam-like crimson. They have been harvested from the sun-drenched hills of Caria, where the air is dry and the soil is rich with the memory of ancient volcanoes. You can almost see the dew that clung to them in the early morning hours before they were plucked. Beside them are pears from the groves of Pompeii, their skins a dusty gold, and bunches of grapes from the slopes of Mount Vesuvius, grapes so dark and heavy they look like clusters of polished obsidian. The Caesar reaches for a fig. He does not use a knife. He pulls it apart with his fingers, a slow and deliberate movement. You watch as the honey-like juice glistens on his fingertips. There is no haste. In the Roman mind, the sweetness of the fruit is a gift from the goddess Pomona, a reward for the patience of the seasons. To rush the eating of a fig is to disrespect the months of sunlight it took to ripen. As you take a piece of the fruit, the sweetness is immediate and profound. It is not the sharp, artificial sweetness of the modern world, but a deep, floral sugar that tastes of the earth and the sun. It dissolves on your tongue, leaving behind the faint, crunching texture of the seeds, a reminder of the cycle of growth and rebirth. The alchemy of honey and grain. Next come the cakes, the libum, and the sevillum. These are the ancestors of all the sweets we know today, but they are simpler, more honest. Imagine a cake made of fresh, creamy ricotta cheese, blended with fine wheat flour and a single egg, then baked slowly over a bed of bay leaves. When the tray is placed near you, you catch the scent of the bay leaves, first a sharp, herbal fragrance that cuts through the sweetness like a cool breeze through a garden. The cake is then drenched in honey while it is still warm. This is not ordinary honey. It is Attic honey from the slopes of Mount Hymettus, where the bees feast on wild thyme and lavender. You watch the honey move. It is thick, viscous, and translucent, flowing over the curves of the cake in slow-motion waves. It catches the light of the oil lamps, turning into liquid amber. It pools at the base of the cake, creating a golden halo on the red pottery. As you breathe in the scent of warm cheese, toasted bay leaves, and herbal honey, creates a sensory cocoon around you. It is a comforting, domestic smell, the smell of a home that is ancient, safe, and eternal. The scent of burning cinnamon. As the dessert course continues, a servant approaches a small bronze brazier in the corner of the room. He carries a small casket made of ivory, and from it he takes a handful of thin, curled barks. This is cinnamon, brought from the edges of the known world, from the mysterious lands beyond the spice ports of the East. He drops the bark onto the glowing coals. For a moment there is a soft, crackling sound, the sound of the fire waking up. Then a thin ribbon of blue smoke begins to spiral toward the ceiling. The scent hits you a few seconds later. It is warm, woody, and intensely sweet, a fragrance that seems to vibrate in the air. In Rome, cinnamon was so precious that it was burned at the funerals of empresses and the triumphs of emperors. Tonight, it is burned simply to scent the air of your repose. You watch the smoke rise. It twists and turns, caught in the invisible currents of the room. It moves with a lazy, liquid grace, eventually disappearing into the shadows of the high, vaulted roof. You find your eyes following the smoke, your gaze becoming unfocused, your mind beginning to drift. The scent of the cinnamon acts as a bridge between the physical world and the world of the imagination. It clears away the last vestiges of logic and replaces them with a sense of wonder. The music of the kithara has faded into a low, pulsing drone. Now a new voice enters the room. A storyteller, a lector, steps into the circle of light. He wears a simple robe of unbleached wool and carries a scroll of Egyptian papyrus, the edges worn and yellowed with time. He does not stand to speak. He sits on a low stool, leaning forward as if he is sharing a secret. His voice is a rich, deep baritone, like the sound of a distant cello. He does not tell tales of war or the clashing of bronze. Instead, he speaks of the old gods, the ones who lived in the trees and the springs, long before the marble temples were built. In the beginning, he begins, his voice dropping to a whisper that carries perfectly across the silent room. The world was not made of stone and law. It was made of breath and shadow. There was a time when the stars were the eyes of the giants, watching over the earth as it slept. You listen to the cadence of his voice. It has a rhythmic, repetitive quality, much like the sound of the waves outside. You don't feel the need to follow every word of the story. The meaning of the tale is less important than the sound of the telling. It is a vocal tapestry, a layer of sound that wraps around you, providing a sense of companionship in the deepening night. As the storyteller continues, your gaze wanders back to the walls of the triclinium. The frescoes, which seemed so bright and vibrant in the afternoon light, have now transformed. In the low, flickering light of the lamps, the painted gardens seem to have gained depth. The blue-winged birds on the walls look as if they might actually take flight, their wings shimmering in the amber glow. You notice the way the shadows play across the marble columns. The shadows are not black, they are a deep, velvety blue-gray. They move with the flickering of the flames, stretching and shrinking, creating an illusion of movement in the stone. The room feels as if it is breathing with you. The Caesar has closed his eyes now. His hands are folded over his chest, his breathing slow and regular. He is the most powerful man in the world. Yet here, in this moment, he is simply a man listening to a story, surrendering to the inevitable pull of the night. His presence is a silent permission for you to do the same. There is no need for vigilance. There is no need for thought. A servant moves among the guests, offering a final cup of wine. This is the conversatio, the drinking session that follows the meal. But tonight it is tempered with wisdom. The wine is a passima sweet, straw-colored wine made from grapes that have been dried in the sun until they are almost raisins. As the wine is poured into your glass, you hear that delicate crystalline sound, the clink of glass against glass. It is a high, pure note that hangs in the air for a second before vanishing. The wine is thick and heavy, like liquid gold. It tastes of sunshine and old wood. You take a small sip, feeling the warmth of the alcohol mingle with the sweetness of the honey and the spice of the cinnamon. It is a perfect harmony of flavors, a final chord in the symphony of the feast. You feel the warmth spread down through your body, reaching your toes and your fingertips, loosening the last bits of tension in your muscles. The storyteller finishes his tale. He does not end with a flourish, but with a lingering silence that is eventually joined by the sound of the sea. He rolls up his papyrus scroll with a soft, dry, rasping sound, the sound of old paper against itself. He bows his head slightly and fades back into the shadows. The room is now very quiet. The only sounds are the occasional pop of a cooling ember in the brazier and the steady, rhythmic breathing of the guests. The silence is not empty. It is full of the resonance of the evening. It is the silence of a body that is completely satisfied and a mind that is finally at rest. You look out through the open archway of the triclinium toward the peristyle garden. The moon has risen high now, casting a silver light over the white marble statues and the dark green leaves of the laurel trees. The garden looks like a dream version of itself, a place of silver and shadow, where time has ceased to exist. You think about the world outside, the vast, sleeping empire. You think of the sentries on the walls of Rome, the sailors on the darkened Mediterranean, the farmers in the quiet fields of Gaul. They are all under the same moon, all breathing the same night air. There is a profound sense of unity in this thought. We are all travelers in the dark, moving toward the same morning. The Caesar stirs slightly in his sleep, a small movement that settles him deeper into his cushions. The servants begin to extinguish the lamps, one by one. They do not blow them out. They use a small silver snuffer, a gentle action that silences the flame without a puff of smoke. With each lamp that goes out, the room becomes more intimate, more private. The shadows grow larger, wrapping around your couch like a soft, invisible blanket. The world is narrowing down to the point of your own breath. The secunda mensa is over. The feast is complete. But the experience remains a warm glow in your chest, a richness in your memory. You feel the heavy, pleasant weight of the goose-down pillows under your head. The silk of the cushions is cool against your cheek. The music has stopped completely now, leaving only the sound of the wind in the garden and the sea against the rocks. It is a lullaby that has been playing for thousands of years, long before the Caesars and long after they are gone. You are safe. You are warm. You are part of the story of the night. The feast in the Triclinium has reached its soft, silent conclusion. The voices have drifted into whispers, and the whispers have eventually surrendered to the rhythmic, oceanic pull of sleep. But for you, there is one final transitioner bridge between the golden warmth of the banquet hall and the deep, velvet embrace of the night. Imagine yourself slowly rising from your couch. Your body feels heavy, yet oddly light, as if the wine and the honey have replaced the tension in your limbs with a gentle, glowing warmth. You move with a slow, deliberate grace, your bare feet finding the cool, solid reality of the mosaic floor. The stones are no longer warm from the day's sun. They have taken on the temperature of the moonlight. You step away from the flickering amber of the remaining oil lamps and move toward the open archway that leads into the peristyle garden. The threshold of the night has. You cross the threshold. The air changes. It is no longer thick with the scents of roasted boar, burning cinnamon, and expensive wines. Instead, it is vast, cool, and bracingly clean. It is the breath of the Mediterranean, filtered through the leaves of 1,000 trees. You stand at the edge of the covered walkway, the portico. Above you, the roof is supported by a forest of fluted marble columns, their white surfaces turned to a ghostly, iridescent silver by the moon. You reach out and rest your hand against the stone. It is smooth, impossibly smooth, and carries the deep, ancient cold of the earth from which it was quarried. This is Carrara marble, born in the heart of the mountains, shaped by the chisels of masters, and now standing as a silent sentry in the house of the Caesar. Listen to the silence. It is not a hollow void, but a living, breathing thing. There is the distant, rhythmic hush, hush, hush of the sea against the cliffs below. There is the faint, metallic rustle of the palm fronds as they brush against each other in the breeze, a sound like falling coins or the dry scales of a sleeping dragon. And then there is the water. The song of the fountain. At the center of the garden sits a fountain, a masterpiece of bronze and stone. It is a statue of a nymph, her head tilted back, water flowing from an overturned amphora into a wide, shallow basin of black basalt. The sound of the water is the heartbeat of the garden. It is a constant, shimmering melodious series of high, clear notes that seem to sparkle in the air. Plink, chime, ripple. You watch the water fall. In the moonlight, it looks like liquid silver, breaking into 1,000 tiny diamonds as it hits the surface of the pool. The ripples spread outward in perfect, concentric circles, moving toward the dark edges of the basalt basin before disappearing. You walk toward the fountain, your footsteps silent on the damp grass. The grass is short and soft, like a carpet of green silk, still holding the moisture of the evening mist. As you reach the water's edge, you feel a fine, cool spray against your skin, a gentle mist that settles on your forehead and your arms. washing away the last remnants of the banquet's heat. You look down into the pool. The water is so clear that you can see the white pebbles at the bottom, each one rounded by years of movement. You see the reflection of the moon, a perfect, shivering disk of light caught in the center of the basin. You feel a sense of profound stillness. To the Romans, water was a sacred elementa purifier of the spirit. As you stand by the fountain, you feel your thoughts being smoothed out like the surface of the water after the ripples have died away. The architecture of the garden. The garden is a world of geometry and shadow. It is enclosed on all four sides by the villa, a secret sanctuary where the wildness of nature is ordered by the mind of man. You see the hedges of boxwood clipped into perfect spheres and squares, their dark leaves glistening with dew. They look like solid walls of emerald, providing a structure to the night. Between the hedges there are paths of crushed white shells. Under the moon, these paths glow with an inner light, guiding your eyes through the labyrinth of the garden. You follow a path toward a grove of lemon trees. The leaves are thick and waxy, reflecting the silver light like tiny mirrors. You reach up and touch a lemon. It is still hanging from the branch, its skin rough and cool. You don't need to pick it to know its scent. The air around the tree is heavy with a sharp citrus fragrance that is both refreshing and deeply calming. It is the smell of the south, the smell of eternal summer. Beside the lemons, there are the laurel trees, the sacred trees of Apollo. Their scent is different, herbal, spicy, and noble. You think of the Caesar's crown, now resting on a table in the Triclinium, and you realize that the power of Rome is rooted in the soil of this garden. The scent of the night-blooming jasminas. You move deeper into the shadows. A new fragrance begins to dominate the air. It is sweet, heavy, and almost intoxicating. This is the night-blooming jasmine, a flower that hides from the sun and only reveals its soul to the moon. The flowers are tiny, small, white stars lost among the dark green vines that climb the marble columns. But their scent is immense. It fills your lungs, slowing your breath, pulling you further into the dreamscape of the night. It is a fragrance that speaks of mysteries, of secrets told in the dark, of the world that exists when the eyes are closed. You find a stone bench carved with the images of reclining lions, and you sit. The stone is cool beneath you. You lean your head back against the cold marble of the pillar and look up. The canopy of the stars above the peristyle. The sky is a vast indigo dome. There is no haze of city lights here, no smoke to blur the vision. The stars are brilliant, hard, and ancient. You see the Great Bear, the hunter, and the seven sisters, each one a tiny point of fire in the infinite dark. The Romans believed that the stars were the souls of the great, that the ancestors looked down from the heavens to watch over the living. You feel their gaze. It is not a judgmental gaze, but a quiet, patient one. They have seen 1,000 feasts, 1,000 gardens, and 1,000 nights like this one. Their distance brings a sense of perspective. Your worries, your tasks, the very era in which you live, all of it is a single heartbeat in the life of the stars. The moon moves slowly, casting long, dramatic shadows across the garden. You watch the shadow of a statue of marble Diana with her bow creep across the shell-covered path. The movement is so slow that you can only perceive it by closing your eyes and opening them again a few minutes later. It is the movement of time itself, stripped of its urgency. In the corners of the garden, where the moonlight does not reach, the shadows feel thick and velvety. They are not frightening. They are like the deep folds of a heavy cloak. You imagine the spirits of the house, the genius of the Caesar, and the lares of the hearth drifting through these shadows, ensuring that the peace of the villa remains undisturbed. You hear a small, dry sound, a rustle in the ivy, a lizard, perhaps, or a small bird settling into its nest. The sound only serves to emphasize the surrounding quiet. The garden is a place of rest for all creatures. The bees have returned to their hives in the hills. The dogs are curled in the shadows of the atrium. The very wind has softened its voice to a whisper. You find yourself sinking into the silence. The rhythmic sound of the fountain drip, drip, splash begins to act as a metronome for your thoughts. You match your breathing to the water. Inhale as the water rises from the nymph's urn. Exhale as it splashes into the basin. Inhale, exhale. The memory of the earth. Think about the layers of history beneath your feet. Long before this villa was built, before the first Romans set foot on this cliff, the earth was here. The sea was here. The moon rose over these same mountains. The garden is a thin layer of beauty laid over the ancient, rugged strength of Italy. The marble columns go deep into the ground, anchoring the house to the bedrock. You feel a sense of stability, of being held by the world. You are not a fleeting visitor. You are part of the landscape. The cold of the stone bench begins to seep through your clothes, but it is not an uncomfortable cold. It is a grounding sensation, a reminder of your physical presence in this beautiful, silent place. You feel the weight of your body, the solidity of your bones, the slow, steady pulse in your veins. The return to the interior. Eventually, the pull of sleep becomes too strong to ignore. The Otium, the sacred leisure, has done its work. Your mind is clear, your senses are satiated, and your body is ready for the deep, restorative darkness. You rise from the bench, taking one last look at the silver garden. The fountain continues its tireless song. The jasmine continues to pour its soul into the air. The stars continue their slow dance. The garden does not need you to witness it. It will continue in its beauty, whether you are awake or asleep. This is a comforting thought, that the world remains in good hands while you rest. You walk back toward the portico, your feet finding the familiar path of white shells. You enter the villa once more, passing through the quiet corridors, where the lamps have burned down to a faint blue glow. The air here is warmer, smelling of honey and old wood. As you move toward your sleeping chamber, you carry the garden within you. You carry the silver light, the sound of the water, and the scent of the night-blooming flowers. They are the seeds of your dreams. The final threshold, you reach the door to your room. It is a heavy door of dark cedar, bound with bronze. As you push it open, it moves with a soft, lubricated sigh. Inside, the bed is Watina frame of polished wood, strung with leather thongs, and topped with a mattress of soft, supportive wool. The linens are white, smelling of the sun and the lavender they were stored with. You lie down, and for a moment, you simply listen. The sea is still there, a distant, muffled roar. The house is still there, a protective shell around you. The Caesar is asleep. The empire is asleep. And now, as the silver light of the moon fades from your mind, you allow yourself to follow them. The garden remains outside, a world of silver and shadow, waiting for the dawn. But the dawn is far away. For now, there is only the night. There is only the stillness. There is only the deep, welcoming dark. The transition is now complete. You have left the silver-washed garden with its rhythmic fountains and its heady jasmine, and you have stepped back into the interior of the villa. But the house you return to is not the house you left hours ago. The energy has shifted. The vibrant, flickering life of the feast has settled into a profound, velvety stillness. This is the hour of the sleeping villa, a time when the very stones seems to breathe in a slow, deep unison with the earth itself. As you walk through the long, echoing corridors toward the private quarters, you are struck by the weight of the silence. It is not the silence of an empty place, but the rich, resonant silence of a house that is full of dreams. The gallery of the ancestors. Your path takes you through the gallery of the ancestors. In the flickering light of a single dying lamp at the end of the hall, the wax masks of the family's forefathers look out from their small wooden shrines. These are the faces of the men and women who built this name, who served the Republic and the Empire, who dined with Caesars and walked these same floors centuries before you. In the daylight, these masks might seem stern, their features frozen in the rigid dignity of Roman law. But tonight, in the soft amber shadow, they seem peaceful. They are the silent guardians of the threshold. You look at the soft curve of a jaw, the deep-set eyes, the furrowed brow of a senator from the time of Augustus. There is a sense of continuity, here a feeling that time is not a line, but a great, circling river. You feel the presence of the past as a comforting weight. You are not just a solitary person in a dark room. You are part of a long, unbroken lineage of humanity. The house remembers them, and tonight it holds you with the same steady, unwavering care. The air in this gallery is cooler, smelling faintly of old wood, beeswax, and the dry, sweet scent of papyrus. It is a noble smell, a smell that anchors your spirit to the foundations of the world. The dance of the dying flames. You pass a small bronze stand where an oil lamp is performing its final dance. The oil is nearly gone, and the wick has shortened. The flame does not flicker with the violence of a candle in a draught. Instead, it pulses, it expands and contracts, a tiny, glowing heart beating against the dark. Watch the way the light plays upon the walls. The frescoes of the corridor depict a quiet landscape, a shepherd leading his goats through a grove of olive trees at dusk. In the pulsing light of the lamp, the shepherd seems to move. The olive leaves seem to shimmer as if caught in a phantom breeze. You find yourself slowing your pace to match the pulse of the flame. Pulse and fade, pulse and fade. The shadows on the ceiling are long and soft. They stretch out like the fingers of a gentle hand, smoothing over the cracks in the plaster and the joints of the marble. You realize that in the dark, all things become one. The distinction between the stone, the air, and your own body begins to blur. You are moving through a world of fluid shapes, a world where the hard edges of reality have been softened by the night. The sound of the house breathing. Stop for a moment and listen. Beyond the distant roar of the sea, beyond the drip of the garden fountain, the house itself has a voice. It is the sound of the cooling stone settling into the earth. It is the faint, rhythmic creak of the cedar roof beams as they contract in the night air. It is the sigh of the wind as it is drawn through the compluvium and exhaled through the side passages. To the Romans, a house was a living being. It had its own spirit, its own genius. Tonight, the genius of the villa is at rest. You feel it in the way the air moves, a slow, cool current that brushes against your cheek like a silk veil. It carries the scent of the library, the earthy, grounded smell of leather, cedarwood oil, and ancient knowledge. You imagine the scrolls, tucked away in their pigeonholes, thousands of words, thousands of thoughts, all sleeping. The histories of Livy, the poems of Virgil, the philosophies of Seneca, they are all here, resting in the dark, waiting for the sun to wake them. But tonight, they are not needed. Tonight, the only philosophy is the philosophy of the breath. The only history is the history of the moment. You reach the heavy curtains that lead to the private chambers. They are made of thick, woven wool from the mountains of the north, dyed a deep midnight blue. As you reach out to push them aside, the texture is rough and honest against your palm. It is a tactile reminder of the labor of the loom, of the steady, rhythmic work of the weavers who spent weeks creating this barrier against the cold. As the curtain parts, the air in the sleeping quarters greets you. It is warmer here, shielded from the drafts of the atrium. The floor is covered with a thick rug of woven hemp, which feels prickly and stimulating beneath your tired feet. In the corner, a small brazier of charcoal remains, the embers covered in a layer of white ash. They glow with a dull, subterranean red, the color of a deep sunset. This is the hidden fire, the fire that stays awake so you can sleep. It provides a dry, comforting warmth that settles into your joints, melting away the last lingering fatigue of the journey. The preparation for the deep dark hue move toward the wash basin, a bowl of hammered silver resting on a tripod of wrought iron. The water inside is still, a perfect mirror for the single star visible through the high, narrow window. You dip your hands into the water. It is cool, not coldened. It feels like liquid silk. As you wash your face, the water carries away the scents of the feast, the salt, the honey, the wine. You are returning to your simplest self. You are no longer a guest at a banquet, no longer a traveler in a foreign land. You are a body seeking rest. You are a mind seeking silence. You dry your hands on a towel of Egyptian linen, the fabric so worn and soft it feels like a second skin. Every movement is slow. Every action is a ritual. You are shedding the layers of the day, one by one, until there is nothing left but the steady beat of your heart and the coolness of the night air. The cradle of the bed end, now the bed. It is not the soft, sinking mattress of the modern world, but a Roman bed built for the health of the spine and the peace of the soul. It is a frame of dark, polished walnut, with a web of leather thongs stretched tight across the center. Upon this rests a mattress stuffed with the finest wool, topped with sheets of bleached flax. You sit on the edge of the bed. The leather thongs give slightly under your weight, a firm and supportive embrace. You lie back, and for the first time, you feel the true extent of your relaxation. Your spine aligns itself against the mattress. Your shoulders drop away from your ears. Your hands rest naturally at your sides, the fingers curling loosely like the petals of a closing flower. The sheets are cool and smell of the lavender fields of Provence. It is a clean, purple scent that signals to the brain that the day is over. You pull the heavy wool blanket up to your chin. It has a weight to it, protective weight that makes you feel secure, like a child in a cradle or a seed in the earth. The final observations from your position on the bed. You look out at the room. The shadows have moved again. The small red glow of the brazier casts a long, dancing shape against the far wall. You watch it, fascinated by its randomness, by its lack of urgency. You hear the distant, muffled sound of a door closing somewhere in the depths of the villa. It is a solid, final sound. The house is sealed. The world is barred. there is nothing left to do. There are no more courses to eat, no more stories to hear, no more gardens to walk. The Caesar is asleep in his chamber. The servants are asleep in theirs. The empire, with all its noise and its fury, has faded into a dream. You are in the heart of the silence. You are in the center of the peace. You close your eyes. The image of the silver fountain remains for a moment behind your eyelids. Then it dissolves into a soft, gray mist. You hear the sea hush, hush, hush. And you realize that the sea is not outside the house. The sea is inside you. Its rhythm is your rhythm. Its depth is your depth. The darkness is not a void. It is a presence. It is a warm, heavy blanket that covers your mind, tucking in your thoughts, quieting your memories. You feel yourself sinking, not falling, but sinking into the layers of the night, down through the golden light of the feast, down through the silver light of the garden, down into the deep, dark blue of the sleeping house. The villa holds you. The earth supports you. The night welcomes you. As you lie in the stillness of your chamber, your mind begins to wander back to the table. The flavors of the night are not gone. They are settling into your memory, becoming richer as the world grows quiet. To understand the feast of the Caesar, one must understand the philosophy of the Roman kitchen, a place where food was not merely sustenance, but a display of power, a map of the world, and a slow, deliberate art form. Let us drift back to the heat of the kitchen, to the recipes that have been whispered down through the centuries, recorded by men like Apicius, who sought the perfect balance between the salt of the sea and the sweetness of the hive. The mystery of the garum, the liquid gold of the sea. Think back to that pungent, salty temps that accompanied almost every dish. This was garum, the soul of Roman cooking. To a modern mind, it sounds strange, but to the Roman, it was the essence of the Mediterranean. Imagine great stone vats on the sun-baked coast of Spain or the shores of Pompeii. These vats are filled with the small silver bodies of anchovies, mackerel, and sprats, layered deep with mountains of sea salt and dried Mediterranean herbs, oregano, flowering thyme, and dried mint. The vats are left open to the intense Italian sun for months. In your mind's eye, see the slow alchemy of the sun. The salt draws the moisture from the fish, breaking down the proteins into a clear, amber liquid. This is not the smell of rot. It is the smell of the deep ocean, concentrated and refined. The flour of the garum, the liquamen, is then strained through baskets of woven willow. When it reaches the Caesar's table, it is clear and shimmering, like a fine, tawny port. It is used as we might use salt today, but with a depth that salt can never achieve. It brings a hidden flavor, what the ancients called the fifth taste, a savory weight that anchors the sweetness of the honey and the acidity of the vinegar. As you recall the taste, feel the way it lingers on the back of your tongue, a slow, oceanic hum that balances the richness of the meats, the sculpted meats, the boar, and the hidden surprise. The main course of a Caesar's banquet was often a theatrical performance. Consider the boar of Troy. Imagine a wild boar, massive and dark, brought from the oak-filled forests of the north. It is roasted whole in an oven made of clay and brick, fueled by the wood of old grapevines, which imparts a sweet, smoky aroma to the skin. But the Roman chef is a magician. When the boar is brought into the triclinium, it appears to be a single beast. Yet, when the carver's silver knife slices through the crackling skin, a secret is revealed. Inside the boar is a cavity filled with smaller birds, thrushes, quails, and larks, each one stuffed with spiced forcemeat, pine nuts, and raisins. And inside those birds, perhaps a single perfect egg or a cluster of sausages made from the finest Lucanian pork. This was the Trojan-style meal within a meal, a world within a world. As you imagine the steam rising from the carved meat, think of the textures, the crunch of the roasted skin, the tender, wine-soaked flesh of the thrush, and the snap of the pine nuts. Each bite was a journey through the layers of the forest. The sauce poured over it is a dark, viscous reduction of deaf-fruitum grape, must boil down until it is as thick as honey mixed with crushed black pepper from India and lovage from the slopes of the Alps. The scent is heavy, earthy, and sweet. It is a scent that fills the head, slowing the thoughts, making the body feel anchored to the earth. The exotic and the strange, dormice and flamingo tongues to dine with the Caesar was to eat the impossible. The Romans were fascinated by the micro-delicacies of the world. Think of the glees, the edible dormouse. These creatures were raised in special terracotta jars called gleraria, kept in total darkness, and fed on a constant supply of walnuts, acorns, and chestnuts. In the darkness, the dormouse becomes incredibly plump and tender. When they are prepared for the feast, they are dipped in honey and rolled in crushed poppy seeds, then roasted quickly until the honey caramelizes into a thin, brittle shell. As you imagine taking a bite, feel the contrast, the snap of the poppy seeds, the floral sweetness of the honey, and the rich, buttery meat beneath. It is a morsel of pure luxury, a tiny explosion of flavor that requires no effort to chew. And then there are the more exotic offerings, the tongues of flamingos and peacocks, prepared in a sauce of dates and spiced wine. The peacock's tongue is a symbol of the ultimate extravagance, for it takes 100 birds to fill a single platter. The taste is subtle, almost ethereal, more about the texture and the rarity than the hunger. To the Roman, eating such a thing was a way of consuming the beauty of the world, of taking the color and the grace of the bird into oneself. The grains and the pulses, the grounding of the meal, spiked the exotic meats. The Roman feast was grounded in the products of the field. There is the tisana, a thick, creamy barley water or porridge, cooked slowly for hours with chickpeas, lentils, and dried peas. Imagine the pot sitting on the edge of the charcoal fire, the liquid bubbling softly, blup, blup, blup. The chef adds a bundle of fine herbs, savory, coriander, and a dash of asafoetida, a resin that smells like toasted garlic. The result is a dish that is the ultimate comfort food. It is warm, thick, and incredibly satisfying. It coats the stomach, providing a solid foundation for the lighter, more acidic wines. As you think of this porridge, feel its warmth spreading through your core. It is the food of the legions, the food of the farmers, and even here, in the palace of the Caesar. It is the food that brings the most profound sense of fullness, the sweet ending. The dates of Syria finally. Let us linger on the secunda mensa sweets once more, specifically the stuffed dates. Imagine large, fleshy dates brought by caravan from the oases of Syria. They are the color of mahogany and are so sticky with their own natural sugar that they cling to the fingers. The chef removes the stone and replaces it with a whole almond or a piece of walnut that has been lightly toasted and dusted with salt. The dates are then fried gently in honey until the skin becomes slightly crisp. As they are served, they are still warm, the honey shimmering like liquid gold. When you bite into one, you get the soft, jam-like texture of the date, the crunch of the nut, and the sharp hit of the salt. It is a perfect, balancer, final, lingering chord of flavor that stays with you as you drift toward sleep. The mastery of the wine, the Falernian and the Snow-Ant. What of the wine? The Romans did not drink their wine as we do. It was a concentrated essence, often thick and syrupy, that had to be tamed with water. Imagine a kithara, large, silver mixing bowl filled with Falernian wine, the most prized vintage of the empire, grown on the slopes of Mount Falernus. It has a high alcohol content and a dark amber color. To this, the Magister Bibendi, the master of the drinking, adds water that has been filtered through snow. The snow is brought down from the mountains in the dead of winter, packed into deep pits lined with straw and chaff, and kept frozen until the height of summer. As the snow melts into the wine, you see the condensation forming on the outside of the silver cuptini, cold beads of moisture that catch the lamplight. The wine is flavored with a bouquet of spices, a stick of cinnamon, a few cloves, a pinch of saffron, and a generous amount of honey. It is served warm or chilled, depending on the season. As you take a sip, the wine is not sharp. It is smooth and velvet-like. It flows down your throat like a warm river, loosening the mind and blurring the edges of the room. The ritual of the senses, all of these elements, the salt of the garum, the smoke of the boar, the sweetness of the dates, and the chill of the snow-cooled wine were designed to work together. They were a slow-motion assault on the senses, intended to overwhelm the guest with the sheer variety and richness of the world. But for the Caesar, and for you, the goal was not gluttony, it was appreciation. It was about the ability to discern the difference between honey from one mountain and honey from another. It was about the patience to wait for the next course, to allow the body to process and the mind to reflect. As you lie in your bed now, the memory of these flavors acts as a lullaby. The complexity of the food mirrors the complexity of the world. But here, in the dark, it has all been simplified. The feast is over. The stomach is full. The palate is satisfied. The scents of the kitchen have long since faded, replaced by the neutral, clean smell of your linens. But the feeling of the feast remains a heavy, golden weight in your chest, a sense of being part of a civilization that mastered the art of living. You think of the thousands of cooks, the thousands of sailors, and the thousands of farmers whose work culminated in that one meal. You are the recipient of all that effort. You are the guest of the ages. The world of the Caesar is a world of abundance, but it is also a world of order. And in the order of the night, there is only one thing left to do. The fire in the kitchen is now just white ash. The silver platters are polished and still. The wine is resting in its jars, and you are resting in your heart. Have you ever wondered what the soundtrack to ancient Rome was really like? We often picture the grand Colosseum, the powerful legions, and the wise senators. But what did Rome sound like? Forget the Hollywood scores for a moment. The real music of Rome was vibrant, complex, and absolutely everywhere, from rowdy taverns and solemn temples to the grandest public spectacles. Today, we re-journeying back in time to uncover the lost melodies of an empire and explore the instruments that gave it its voice. We'll look at how music wasn't just entertainment. It was woven into the very fabric of Roman life, reflecting their values, their beliefs, and their connections to the cultures they conquered. So, let's start with the basics. Roman music wasn't born in a vacuum. It was heavily influenced by its neighbors, especially the ancient Greeks and the Etruscans. The Romans, being masters of adaptation, took what they liked, refined it, and made it their own. Music was an essential part of almost every public event. Imagine a religious ceremony without the haunting chants, a military parade without the blare of brass, or a theatrical play without its dramatic musical cues. It's almost impossible. Music set the mood, amplified emotions, and organized society. It was used in education to teach discipline and morality, and professional musicians, though sometimes seen as having a low social status, could become massive celebrities, almost like the rock stars of their day, earning fortunes and adoration from the public. Now, let's meet the stars of the Roman orchestra. First up, we have the kithara. If you've seen images of Greek gods like Apollo, you've probably seen this instrument. The kithara was a large wooden lyre, a stringed instrument with a deep, resonant soundbox. It was considered the instrument of the educated elite and was associated with high art and poetry. Unlike its smaller cousin, the lyra, which was used for teaching, the kithara was a concert instrument for virtuosos. It had between 7 and 11 strings, and players would use a plectrum to pluck them, creating complex melodies and accompaniments for epic poems. Emperor Nero himself was a famous, or perhaps infamous, kithara player. He took his music so seriously that he competed in public festivals, and you can be sure the judges were under a lot of pressure to give him a good review. The kithara's sound was rich and full, perfect for captivating large audiences in theaters and halls. Next, we move from strings to wind with an instrument called the aloes. This one is a bit different. The aloes wasn't a gentle flute. It was a powerful double-reed instrument, usually played in pairs. Imagine 2 oboes being played at the same time by one musician. The sound was pungent, loud, and penetrating. While the kithara was all about refinement and Apollo, the aloes was the instrument of Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstatic celebration. Its piercing sound was perfect for lively festivals, military marches, and the wild, energetic atmosphere of the gladiatorial games. The player, called an aulets, would often wear a leather strap around their head, called a phorbeia, to support their cheeks, which tells you just how much lung power was needed to play this thing. The aloes provided the driving rhythm and high-energy excitement that was essential for many of Rome's most popular and intense public events. It was the sound of passion and raw emotion. But Rome wasn't just about adapting old instruments. They were innovators too. And this brings us to one of the most incredible musical inventions of the ancient world, the hydraulis, or water organ. This was a true marvel of Roman engineering. Invented in the 3rd century BC by a Greek engineer in Alexandria. The Romans perfected it and fell in love with its powerful, majestic sound. So, how did it work? The hydraulis used water pressure to supply a continuous, steady flow of air to the pipes. A keyboard mechanism allowed the player to direct the air into different pipes, creating a range of notes. Essentially, it was the world's first keyboard instrument. Its sound was massive, capable of filling huge arenas like the Colosseum or the Circus Maximus. It was the ultimate instrument for public spectacle, adding a thunderous, awe-inspiring soundtrack to chariot races and gladiatorial contests. Its sheer volume and complexity demonstrated Roman technological genius and their love for all things grand and impressive. Now, what about the people who played these instruments? Musicians in Rome had a complex social standing. On one hand, music was part of a good education for the upper classes. A well-bred Roman was expected to have some musical knowledge. But being a professional musician was a different story. These performers were often slaves or freedmen, and while they could achieve immense fame and wealth, they were still looked down upon by the traditional aristocracy. They were seen as entertainers, not as serious artists, in the same way a poet or a philosopher was. Yet the public adored them. Star musicians, known as citharidi for kithara players, or alutes for aloes players, had devoted fan followings. They toured the empire, competed in prestigious festivals, and their names were known from Britain to Syria. This created a fascinating tension. The very people who filled Roman life with music were often on the margins of so-called respectable society. Of course, music wasn't just for professionals. It was part of daily life for everyone. Soldiers marched to the beat of the tuba and the cornu, curved brass horns that were used to signal commands on the battlefield. At home, families would sing folk songs and lullabies. At a Roman dinner party, it was uncommon for guests to be entertained by a lyre player or for the host themselves to perform. Music was used in healing, with certain melodies believed to soothe the mind and body. The rhythms of work were often accompanied by song, whether it was sailors hauling ropes or farmers harvesting their fields. Music was a universal language that connected different classes and communities across the vast Roman Empire. It was a living, breathing part of the culture. So, what happened to all this music? Why can't we just listen to a playlist of Roman hits? The biggest challenge is that very little of their written music survives. The Romans had a system of musical notation borrowed from the Greeks, but it was complex and not widely used. Most music was passed down orally, from teacher to student. When the Western Roman Empire fell in the 5th century AD, many of these traditions were lost. The chaos of the era, combined with the rise of new forms of music from the early Christian church, meant that the sound of the hydraulis and the wild tunes of the aloes faded into memory. What we know today has been painstakingly pieced together by archaeologists and musicologists from surviving fragments of notation, depictions in art like mosaics and frescoes, and descriptions in the writings of authors like Cicero and Quintilian. By studying these clues, we can get a glimpse into the soundscape of ancient Rome. We can imagine the noble, clear tones of the kithara accompanying a poetry reading in a wealthy villa. We can almost hear the sharp, insistent call of the aloes cutting through the roar of the crowd at the Colosseum. And we can feel the ground shake with the thunderous chords of the hydraulis as the chariots race around the Circus Maximus. These instruments tell us a story not just about music, but about the Romans themselves, their love for order and poetry, their taste for wild spectacle, and their genius for engineering. The music of ancient Rome may be silent now, but its echo can still be heard in the foundations of Western music today. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. It's incredible to think about the rich musical world that existed 2,000 years ago. If you enjoyed this exploration, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments which ancient instrument you'd most want to hear. Thanks for watching. Even the rhythm of the night was controlled. The leader of the ensemble would often wear a scabellum, thick-soled wooden sandal with a small metal hinge. With a gentle tap of the foot, it would produce a soft, clicking sound, like the beat of a distant heart. Tap, tap, tap. This was the chronos, the timekeeper. It was never loud, never intrusive. It was simply there to provide a structure for the evening. In the Roman mind, rhythm was the law of the universe. The seasons had a rhythm. The tides had a rhythm. The breath had a rhythm. By following the soft click of the scabellum, the guests were invited to let go of their own internal fast time, the time of worry and deadlines, and join the slow time of the feast. Then there was the human element. The lector, or reader, did not just speak. He performed a cantillation, a style of speech that was halfway between talking and singing. Imagine him reading from the works of Horace or Ovid. The Latin language, with its long vowels and its rhythmic cadences, is naturally musical. Biddices, il qui procul negot. Happy is he who far from business. The voice of the lector was chosen for its resonance. It was a deep, soothing sound that moved through the air like a heavy velvet curtain. He would pause frequently, allowing the meaning of the words to settle into the minds of the listeners. You didn't need to understand every word of the Latin to feel the effect. The rise and fall of the voice was like the movement of a credula, repetitive, predictable motion that signaled to the brain that it was safe to let go of the ego and drift into the subconscious. As the night progressed, the music underwent a transformation. The complex melodies of the aloes were replaced by the simple, singular notes of the lyre. The volume dropped until the music was barely a whisper, a sound that existed at the very edge of perception. This was intentional. The Romans understood the threshold of sleep. They knew that a sudden silence can be jarring, but a fading sound is an invitation. Imagine the last musician in the room. He is no longer playing for the Caesar. He is playing for the room itself. He plucks a single string on his kithara. The note is deep and pure. It hangs in the warm, scented air for a long time. You follow the sound as it decays, getting softer and softer, until it is indistinguishable from the sound of your own blood rushing in your ears. Then he plucks another. This time the note is even softer. The music becomes a bridge. One end is anchored in the physical world of the triclinium. The other is anchored in the world of dreams. As you cross that bridge, the music ceases to be something you hear with your ears and becomes something you feel with your soul. Now, in your chamber, the music is entirely gone, yet the memory of the sound remains. It is like the ringing of a bell that has stopped, leaving a phantom vibration in the air. This silence is charged. It is a silence that has been prepared by the music. Because you have listened to the rhythmic tap of the scabellum and the long sustained notes of the kithara, your heart is now beating at a slower pace. Your brain waves have shifted from the jagged peaks of the day to the long, rolling swells of the night. The villa is a sounding box. Even now, you can hear the natural music of the house, the wind whistling through a keyhole, the soft thud of a curtain against a wall, the distant, rhythmic pulse of the sea. These are the natural instruments of the Caesar's world. You think of the silence of the stars, those celestial spheres that the philosophers said made a music too perfect for human ears to hear. You imagine yourself floating in that silence, carried along by the harmony of the universe. There is no more noise. There is no more rhythm. There is only the long, sustained note of the night. And as that note finally fades into the absolute dark, you find that you are no longer listening. You are part of the music itself.
The music has dissolved into the architecture of the house, leaving behind a silence that is thick and expectant. But in the Roman world, the transition to sleep was not merely a cessation of sound. It was a curated sensory experience involving the oldest chemistry known to man. To dine with the Caesar was to eventually surrender to the apothecary of dreams, the subtle botanical interventions that smoothed the path from the waking world to the realm of Morpheus. As you lie in your chamber, Let your mind focus on the air itself. It is no longer the heavy, spiced air of the banquet hall. It has been purified and transformed. The science of the scented chamber. In the private quarters of the villa, the air was treated with a meticulous understanding of the relationship between scent and the nervous system. Before you entered this room, a servant performed the ritual of the fomentum. This was not a chaotic burning of incense, but a precise blending of resins and herbs, designed to lower the spirit into a state of repose. Imagine the small tripod brazier standing in the corner of your room. Upon the glowing charcoal, the servant placed a few grains of kifi. This was an ancient, sacred blend inherited from the Egyptians, consisting of 16 ingredients, including raisins, honey, frankincense, myrrh, and sweet rush. The smoke from the kifi is white and thin, rising in a straight line before breaking into delicate blue-gray swirls. It smells of the earth after a rain, mixed with a deep, balsamic sweetness. As you breathe it in, the scent doesn't just sit in your nose. It feels as though it is coating your lungs with a layer of silk. In the Roman medical tradition, these scents were believed to cool the brain, which was thought to be overheated by the passions of the day and the wine of the feast. The lavender of the linens, beneath the resinous smoke of the brazier, there is a cleaner, more floral note. Lavender, the name itself comes from the Latin, lavare, meaning to wash. To the Romans, lavender was the scent of purity and the end of labor. The sheets of bleached flax upon which you lie were stored in chests made of Lebanese cedar, layered with dried lavender blossoms from the hills of Gaul. As you move slightly against the fabric, the friction releases the essential oils trapped in the fibers. It is a sharp, herbal scent that clears the mind of lingering thoughts. Think of the lavender fields, under the Mediterranean sunrose of deep purple stretching toward a hazy horizon, vibrating with the hum of bees. That sun-drenched peace is now folded into the very fabric beneath your cheek. It is a dry, clean smell that suggests the safety of a well-ordered house. You find yourself pressing your face closer to the pillow, inhaling the scent of the mountain air and the purple blossoms until your heartbeat slows to match the rhythm of the wind in the fields. The anointing of the temples recall the final gesture of the evening before the lamps were snuffed. A small glass vial, known as an ungentarium, was brought to your side. It contained an oil of valerian and spikenard, brought at great expense from the mountains of the east. The oil is thick and golden. A single drop was pressed into your temples and the hollow of your throat. As the warmth of your skin meets the oil, it begins to evaporate, creating a personal cloud of fragrance. Spikenard has a heavy, musky, and woody aromanan anchor scent that makes the head feel pleasantly heavy. It is the scent of the deep woods, of damp roots and ancient soil. You feel the oil on your skin, a small, cool point of contact that eventually warms to match your body temperature. It acts as a physical focal point. You can track the sensation of the oil, letting your awareness rest entirely on those 2 points at your temples. Everything else, the room, the villa, the empire, begins to fade into the background. There is only the scent and the skin. The medicine of the poppy. The Romans were well aware of the power of the papaver somniferum, the sleep-bringing poppy. While the Caesars used it with caution, its presence was felt in the final sleeping cup of the evening. This was not the heavy wine of the banquet, but a tisane of honeyed water, infused with the dried petals of the red poppy and a hint of wild lettuce plant. The Romans called lactuca. Verosa, known for its calming opiate-like sap. Imagine the taste. It is slightly bitter, balanced by the floral sweetness of the honey. As the liquid settles in your stomach, it brings a localized warmth that radiates outward. You feel your muscles, the small muscles around your eyes, the tension in your jaw, the grip of your hands slowly uncurling. It is as if a heavy, warm liquid is being poured through your veins, replacing the fire of the day's activities with a cool and steady peace.
Consider the construction of your rest. The Roman pillow was not a shapeless mass of foam. but a deliberate tool for alignment. It is stuffed with the softest down of the white goose, harvested during the spring molt. As you rest your head, the down compresses slowly, conforming to the exact shape of your skull. It provides a cradle that supports the neck, allowing the large muscles of the trapezius to finally let go of their burden. You feel the weight of your head being distributed evenly. There is no pressure, no strain. The pillow is encased in a slip of fine silk, which feels cool and slippery against your skin. This coolness is essential. As the body prepares for deep sleep, its core temperature must drop. The cool silk and the breathable flax sheets facilitate this biological transition. You are being tuned for sleep, like a kithara being lowered in pitch at the end of a performance. The evaporation of timon, this scented dark, the concept of time begins to lose its grip. Without the visual cues of the sun or the social cues of the feast, your mind enters a liminal space. The scents of the apothecary, the kiffy, the lavender, the spikenard act as markers in this new world. They are the landmarks of the subconscious. You find yourself drifting between memories. One moment you are smelling the roasted meats of the prima mensa, the next you are in a field of lavender, and the next you are floating in a sea of honeyed water. These are not sharp thoughts, they are soft thoughts. They have no edges. They bleed into one another, like watercolors on damp papyrus. You don't try to catch them or organize them. You simply watch them pass by, like the clouds of incense smoke rising from the brazier. The final fragrance, the cedar and the darkther. Last scent you perceive is the scent of the room itself, the cedar wood of the ceiling beams and the door. Cedar is a protective scent. It is the smell of endurance, of a wood that does not rot, a wood that repels the insects of the night. It provides a final, masculine counterpoint to the floral sweetness of the herbs. It is the smell of the shell that protects you. You feel encased in this fragrant wood, held within the heart of a great, silent tree. The villa is your forest. The bed is your nest. The scent is your shield. The oil lamps have all gone out now. The wick's last embers have been consumed, leaving a faint, pleasant smell of burnt olive oil that quickly vanishes into the cedar and the lavender. The darkness is now total, but it is a scented darkness. You can see the room through your nose, the position of the brazier, the location of the window, the proximity of the door. Your breathing is now so shallow and quiet that it is almost indistinguishable from the silence of the room. The apothecary has done its work. The chemistry of the earth has merged with the chemistry of your body. There is no more you and the room. There is only the scent of the night. There is only the slow, rhythmic evaporation of the day. There is only the deep, fragrant, and eternal dark. The villa of the Caesar has reached its peak of stillness. The scents of the apothecary have settled. The music has dissolved into the grain of the wood, and the stars have wheeled further across the deep indigo sky. As you lie in the absolute safety of your chamber, your mind casts one final, lingering look back at the triclinium. You realize now that the banquet was not just a meal. It was a ritual of belonging, a slow-paced rehearsal for the peace you feel now. In the Roman world, the feast was a reflection of the cosmos itself, ordered, abundant, and governed by the laws of harmony. To understand the banquet is to understand the art of letting go, the geometry of the reclining mind. Recall, one last time, the physical sensation of the lectus, the dining couch. In the modern world, we sit upright, our spines tense, our feet planted firmly as if ready to run. But the Roman banquet demanded a total surrender to gravity. Imagine the U-shape of the couches once more. The Romans called this the triclinium because of the 3 tri-couches, clinia. There was the lectus imus, the lectus medius, and the lectus summus. Each position had its place in the social order. Yet, as the night wore on, these distinctions melted away into a collective state of Otium. Think of the physics of reclining on your left elbow. This posture was believed to open the heart and slow the digestion. It forced a pace that was incompatible with haste. You could not reach quickly for a dish. You had to wait for it to be brought to you. You could not pace the room. You were anchored in a nest of silk and down. As you lie in your bed now, mimic that sense of weightedness. Feel the way the mattress supports your hips, your shoulders, and the back of your head. You are no longer an active participant in the world. You are a recipient of its comforts. The couch of the feast has become the bed of your dreams, and the transition is seamless. The alchemy of the unswept floor in the dim, fading memory of the dining room. Look down at the floor one last time. We spoke of the asarotos oikos, the unswept floor mosaic. Observe the incredible detail in the stones. The discarded shell of a lobster, the half-eaten claw of a crab, the rind of a pomegranate, the stone of an olive. To the Roman, this was a memento mori, a reminder of the fleeting nature of the feast. But it was also a celebration of the now. It said, "We were here, we enjoyed, we left our mark." There is a profound peace in the idea of the unswept floor. It is the permission to be imperfect. It is the acceptance that the feast of life leaves a mess, and that the mess itself is beautiful because it is evidence of a life well lived. As your mind wanders over these stone scraps, let go of any need for tidiness in your own thoughts. Let the fragments of your day lie where they fall. You do not need to sweep them away. You do not need to organize them. Like the mosaic, they are simply part of the pattern of your history. They are still permanent and silent. The lingering spirit of the wine of the Caesar, was never just alcohol. It was a liquid history. Think of the amphorythos, tall terracotta jars with pointed bases, sealed with cork and lime, stored in the darkness of the apotheca, above the hearth where the smoke would gently age them. Some of the wine you drank tonight was older than the servants who poured it. It had sat in the dark for 20, 30, perhaps 40 years, waiting for this specific night. As you breathe slowly, imagine that waiting energy. The wine did not rush to mature. It sat in the cool dark, absorbing the character of the earth and the passage of time. You are like that wine now. You are in your dark cellar, your room. You are aging into sleep. There is a deep, subterranean coolness to this thought. You are not losing time as you sleep. You are maturing in it. The richness of the feast is being processed, turning into the wisdom of the morning. Feel the vintage of your own life, the complexity of your memories, the sweetness of your successes, the tannins of your challenges, all blending together into a smooth, harmonious whole. The final service, the silent departure. In the very last moments of the banquet, before the guests were led to their rooms, there was the commestatio. This was the final round of drinks, governed by the master of the feast, who decided the ratio of water to wine. Tonight, the master of the feast is the night itself, and the night has decided that the wine shall be pure and the water shall be still. Imagine the servants moving for the last time. They do not speak. They communicate through the soft clink of silver and the gentle rustle of linen. They are like the shadows themselves, moving with a grace that suggests they are not made of flesh and bone, but of moonlight and silence. They extinguish the last of the wall-mounted torches. Watch the smoke from the final torch rise toward the ceiling. It is a thick, black ribbon that slowly thins into a translucent gray, eventually vanishing into the darkness of the rafters. With that final flame gone, the theater of the banquet is closed. The stage is empty. The guests are gone. Only the house remains. The Romans believed that the gods themselves sat at a perpetual banquet on Olympus the Lectusmanium. They believed that by dining well, by dining slowly, and by dining with a quiet heart, they were momentarily joining that divine table. You are at that table now. The food is the air you breathe. The wine is the silence of the room. The music is the steady beat of your own heart. Think of the emperors who sat where you sat, Augustus, who preferred simple bread and cheese, Hadrian, who loved the architecture of the feast, Marcus Aurelius, who used the banquet to reflect on the brevity of life. They all reached this same point. They all eventually closed their eyes and surrendered to the same darkness that is now holding you. There is a great, echoing community of sleep that spans 2,000 years. You are reclining next to the Caesars. You are sharing the same peace. The boundaries of time have dissolved. The marble of the villa and the wood of your bed are the same substance in the eyes of the night. The final sensation, the weight of the empires, you drift into the final layers of consciousness. Feel the weight of Rome. It is the weight of the great limestone blocks of the Colosseum. It is the weight of the paving stones of the Appian Way, worn smooth by millions of feet. It is the weight of the laws, the weight of the language, and the weight of the history. But it is not a heavy weight. It is a solid weight. It is the feeling of being part of something vast and enduring. You are not a leaf blown by the wind. You are a stone in a great arch. You are supported on all sides by the strength of the past. The sea outside the window, the Mare Nostrums, the same sea that carried the grain ships and the triremes. It continues its rhythmic pulse, in and out, rise and fall. You match your spirit to the sea. The feast is done. The table is clear. The guests are at rest. The Caesar has laid down his crown. The soldier has laid down his sword. The poet has laid down his pen. And you, finally, have laid down your day. The shadows are now your friends. They are not the absence of light, but the presence of peace. They wrap around your bed, tucking in the corners of your mind, smoothing the brow of your soul. The banquet of the Caesars is eternal, but for tonight the doors are closed. The lamps are snuffed. The silence is absolute. Sleep now in the heart of the empire. Sleep now in the house of the stars. Sleep now, for the feast is complete.